Hello everyone, a very good morning to all of you. I hope I'm audible and visible. Please confirm the same. Can you confirm all those who are available here? Do type in the chat box if the audio and video is clear. So we had a little delay before we started the session. I'm happy you guys stayed here. So today we are going to talk about English section, English mock analysis. And I hope you all have your mock copy with you. The copies were provided on your student portal also. You could access it through your downloads and login that you had. And I hope you had a good session yesterday. Padma ma'am did her legal section. And these sessions prior to the exam, we have to be precise, we have exactly 1 month, probably in another 30 days. On 23rd, you'll be writing your test. So this is a peak time for all of you to stay focused and brush up your fine skills that help you to prepare towards your exams. So the sessions that we are going to do here, so far you've learned the concepts, and I strongly believe that each one of you is familiar with every single concept that is required to tackle the CLAT exam. The most important thing at this point of time, the last minute preparation, the thing is staying focused. That's the most important thing that I want you guys to focus on. Stay focused. That's the thing. Our exam, until the exam is over, and of course be alert with the counseling, and staying focused is the primary goal that I want you guys to keep in your mind. Stay focused, stay focused. That's the main thing. And the other thing is being prepared and being informed, right? Being prepared and being informed. Like I always say, before the actual World Cup, it's not the month before World Cup people get prepared to. They are practicing, but final form before the match is important too. Now this is where you need to be in full form, in full action. That happens when you're practicing properly, and for all the question types, if you're alert in terms of your strategies that you focus when you're solving your questions and all that. So be in full form all the question types that you've done through mocks, worksheets, topic tests, sectional tests, material, thousands of questions you've dealt all these months. So believe in yourself and stay focused and practice. You're going to do great. Okay? So let's get on with our session now. The mock 66, this English session will be done now. So let's move to the session. Okay. I hope my screen is clear with you. This is the first passage that we have. Right? Please take a quick look at the passage before we proceed on to the questions. A quick 30-second read should be sufficient for you. This seems to be a pretty much easy passage with majority of the questions, and only one or two questions were little. One or two questions are probably of medium difficulty, and I've seen majority of you, at least 70 to 80% of the students have attempted these questions. So we just need to focus on your accuracy in terms of your attempts. So this is a pretty doable passage. Okay, the first passage is pretty much doable. If you look at the passage and all that, I'll do a quick read so that you can focus on the main things too. Desalinization is one of the most widespread clean water technologies. So you're talking about a technology. The opening line itself gives you that idea, and further explanation proceeds with a new solar plant, that solar powered desalinization device that they're talking about. And you have MIT and Shanghai universities, and the liters of drinking water that is being purified, the process of drinking water that is being purified, and how it is being purified. All that discussion is happening in the first few lines of it. Okay, and a little later, sorry about that. Okay, so I hope now it's clear, guys. Thank you guys for letting me know that. Okay, so a little later you have about the Shanghai team and others activities that you have here. So more than 120 countries worldwide use desalinization technologies, and you talk about the Dubai-based technology. And come later, you have two other methods that we have here. Right. So the entire discussion is predominantly on a process, and the process is introduced and explained. And later, you're talking about another technology being used in Dubai and the two methodologies that you're having there. And finally, you end the passage with the challenges that are there with the other technology when it comes to the environmental effect and all that. That is the ultimate idea that we have for this passage. Okay? So let's move on to the questions quickly. The first one is, which areas is desalination most helpful in? The question is pretty clear about the areas in which region you're looking at. So the first paragraph itself, you have the word related to dry areas. So obviously it's not about clean water. It's regions with low rainfall, and regions with freshwater supply doesn't make sense. Enriched nutrients, no, that is not it. So here your answer will be regions with low rainfall, because you have the word there, dry, right? That is a clear-cut answer for you. Got it, guys? So that's the first question, pretty much easy one, and I hope each one of you made it right. Coming to the next question, choose the group of options that best represents the purpose of desalination as it fulfills for more than 120 countries. So basically you have the process. The main thing that you have is for water and other industry or other regions that you have again a skim scan through the passage. Worldwide use of technologies to purify seawater and brackish water for drinking, agriculture, and industry. So three main purposes are given there: drinking, agriculture, and industry part of it. So aviation and petroleum are two specific things there. So we are going with the answer D. Second and fourth are the options that we have for this question. So this is a pretty clear skim scan kind of a question, not at all difficult, and around 70 to 80% of the students have marked it properly, and maybe each one of you should be able to do that. The third question is pretty much easy. That's contextual vocabulary, and you don't actually need to go into the passage also. It's pretty much clear. Which of the following word is not synonymous to purification? Purification, you know, it's a very, very simple word. It's an easy question. Opposite of purification, something that is not agreeing with purification, is anything to do with impurities. Now in this question, adulteration of food is a very common word. It's not something that any one of you should be ever be confused with. So even if you're not familiarized with the words of ablution is probably familiar, exfoliation is familiar. Even if the option D is not clear to you, honestly, you don't need to worry at all. You don't need to worry at all with all the other words. The word that we know and the answer is what matters. Whenever you have vocabulary based questions, guys, my simple solution to you is recognize the word, go back to the passage if the word is not clear to you, look around the information. Obviously, sometimes what happens is you'll have secondary meanings to words. Okay, now that this word is pretty much clear, it's not a big deal, but sometimes words have secondary meanings and that might add to our confusion. To avoid that, in order to ensure accuracy, you could probably go back to the passage and check around. Okay, that's the first thing that you need to do. Second thing is you don't need to really worry about the options that are there around. Okay, because what matters is the answer that I want. Nobody's questioning about what is in the not the answer. It doesn't matter. So C, adulteration, pretty much clear cut answer, a very doable and easy one here. Okay. Now, let's come to the fourth question. Which of the following statements could be inferred from the passage? Now, that's a keyword that we always need to be cautious with. Inferred. Remember, some questions you'll have skim scan kind of thing where you can directly go into the passage, find a line where you have an answer. Reading comprehension is pretty simple, guys. All you have to do is locate the data from the passage, locate the line from the passage where you have an answer. That is the first thing, which is taken care of with the first 2 or 3 questions are pretty much that. Now, when it comes to inferred, you need to be little cautious where you have to read between the lines. Okay? That is one thing. And the other thing is whenever you have options with inferred questions, do not jump on to something first. Okay? Do not jump on to something that you see first, or do not fall for the nouns, right? Because common desalination, you had that word. Thermal, you had that word. Multi-stage, you had that word. All those words are seen in the passage. If your memory takes you there, guys, you might make a mistake. Please read the full sentence, okay? Because the full sentence will give you information about the complete data and you'll infer the content properly. So here you have 2 sentences. The first one is common desalination, which is based on reverse osmosis process. Okay? And the thermal desalination, that is about heat related process. Now, since the sentence talks about both methods related to heat evaporation, you can eliminate that. So it is basically trapped with the 2 nouns, but the details part of it is something that you need to be cautious with. So if students have made a mistake with this particular type of question, fourth one, I think there is a good number of students who made a mistake with this question. Around 50% of you who took the question basically made a mistake here. 50% made it right. So this is a trap one, guys. So if you're making mistake with this kind of questions, don't fall for the traps. Now the next one, common desalination. It is something that is used for with reverse osmosis process. So the better answer that we go for here is none of the above. Okay, none of the above is a clear-cut answer for us in this question. Got it, guys? Pretty much doable, and one of the tricky ones, I would say, or one of the medium question. I wouldn't say it's a difficult question. It's a medium question. And honestly, since this is the first passage in the question in the entire set of English, and the passage is pretty much readable, you didn't have to regress a lot. You didn't have to go back and read anything. So you should be making it right, guys. Okay. Then adding more stages to solar power desalination devices. What is the benefit here? Again, it's a clear-cut line from the passage there. Adding more stages and optimizing the process could improve efficiency to 700 to 800%. So you have all the lines here, guys. Everything is in the passage. There's nothing that we went beyond. You have dry regions here for the first question, right? I hope you can see my highlights there. Then you have the drinking, agriculture, and other purposes here in this line. And you have your desalination, which is high pressure process. And then you have your thermal that you have here. And obviously, the things that you need to improve efficiency. Everything is from the passage. Guys, five marks can be in your TP easily, and if not five, at least four from this page of questions that we have. Okay, let's move on to one more question based on this passage. Which of the following best summarizes the main idea of the passage? Now, this is the ultimate question here that needs a little bit of effort. With regards to this question type, we need to have a knowledge of the complete passage, obviously, and summary is something. Whenever you have summary questions, one thing for you when it comes to summary question, guys, look for complete information versus incomplete data. Okay, summary questions at sometimes what happens is incomplete data becomes a trap for you, and I don't want you guys to fall for it. Okay, earlier we learned that don't fall for nouns in terms of traps, right? Complete details you need to be cautious with, and in terms of summary questions we need to be cautious with incomplete data. Okay, so we have questions here. The first one is desalination is a reason for global warming. Well, that's not what it is. Desalination through solar power and its viability. That's the topic that we had. Solar power, desalination, a boon. Bane is a curse, so that's not what we are talking about. MIT or Shanghai, which one is better? Totally, that is not the topic at all. You're not talking about universities here. You're talking about a device. So D is happily eliminated. C is an incorrect option for you. So towards the end of the passage, if you looked at it, there were some concerns with the Dubai process and other things, but they are worried a little bit about environment. So definitely solar thing, the viability, that becomes the ultimate and best possible answers for us in this given scenario. Okay, so that's with the first passage for you. If you have any questions with regards to first passage, please key in here so that we can discuss. Naina, looks fine. I hope the entire first passage is clear. Very good. What are the main question types and what are the main takeaways that we can take with this first one? Skim scan for direct information. That is the first one that we can look at. And whenever you have inferred question, don't fall for the traps of nouns. Read between the lines and read the complete details. That is the second thing that you could do. And whenever you have summary questions, incomplete data, don't fall for it. Look for the complete picture. Honestly, the sixth question is pretty much close, like summary or purpose of the passage also. Either ways, that question also can be addressed with this question type. Okay, guys, I hope you followed. Okay, Vartika. So how many marks did you score in this section, guys? 6 questions we had here. 6, and I think at least 5 should be pretty much doable. All correct also should be possible. Right? Were you able to score 5, 6? Did you make a mistake with any particular type? And I hope you are clear with how do we address with such issues. Okay. Okay then, assuming you're clear with the first passage, let's move on with the second one. Second passage, please take a quick look with the content. Okay, let's take a quick look at the content. Okay. I hope you all also have your copies. And with paper-based exam, that's one advantage that you guys have. You can happily scribble, you can happily scroll, look at different question types. Underlining the keywords are something that you can always look at. Second passage, guys, I'll give you 30 seconds. Please take a quick look at that. I think with COVID, even last year probably we had COVID kind of news a lot, and this year also you're having COVID. Remember one thing with passages which look like familiar topics. This is something that I would like to share from my years of experience. Certain topics keep changing. Okay, when it comes to passages, it's very important that you focus on the information in the passage, guys. That is the most important thing. Like for instance, there was a situation once upon a time about polio. In India, polio cases were a very common, like 10 to 15 years ago, somewhere around 2000 time. There were like lots of cases and all, and they had a proper drives of vaccination and all. And some years back, the polio cases were like completely off Indian scenario. I mean, we still have vaccination drives regularly, but the case is completely off. So basically, if the passage is taken from any article somewhere from 90s and all that, factually it won't corroborate with what's happening today, right? But you guys have to remember, I know that you prepare a lot with GK also, but when it comes to questions of English or reasoning or anything that you have, look at the data that you have in front of you, right? Your GK is the one area where you have to have the knowledge of the entire world or whatever is required for the GK column. But here in English, keep that in mind. Don't fall for the trap of any data which is beyond the data given in the passage. The 450 words that you have here is the most important thing. Okay, so that's one thing that I want you to take away from this current topic that we have here. Let's look at it. New Home Ministry guidelines to check further spread of COVID-19 during winter months starting December reflect the government's concern. That's an important point that we have here. Gradually reviving economic activity should remain unaffected by ongoing containment measures. This looks like a lengthy sentence. A quick gap or quick summary of it will help you. Basically, whenever you have sentences which are 3 or 4 lines long, summarize the content before you proceed to the next one, or underline any keywords. Since it's paper-based, you can always benefit with that to the part of the passage questions, or it will help you to develop a mental framework in your mind about the flow of content. So here, the idea here, the government is concerned because there are containment areas, and when we are working on reviving economic these things should not affect because it's been pretty much long time that we are under lockdown. So definitely that is a concern that the government is having in the statement. The center has mandated that states declare containment zones online, identifying them with micro-targeting. Now, this word mandated is very important. Adjectives and adverbs are something that you always have to focus when you're doing reading comprehension, because they give emphasis to the author's tone or the points there. Mandated is like a pretty strong word that it is compulsory that you have to do it kind of thing. It is good to do is different, it is mandatory is different. So that's one thing. For instance, I think recently in one of the webinars, somebody was asking, should we get vaccinated before CLAT entrance exam? There's actually a line in the notification that was released that students should try to get vaccinated. Okay, not everybody is necessarily above 18, not every state is vaccinating above 18. So it's not a mandated word there. Okay, guys, so it's basically good to do thing, or if you have an opportunity, get it done. So just like what we read in the notification here also we need to be very cautious with the terminology, with the words and the power of words. Adjectives and adverbs, they have an influencing capacity on your entire answer. So look at that word carefully. It is also prohibited any lockdowns at states and city levels without prior consultation with the ministry. So it's also important that we focus on anything to do with what do you say, with regards to any lockdown rules, anything new that you have with regards to lockdown and all that, please make sure that it is carefully informed to all of us and other things are there. So that's what this is all. Sorry about my power supply, guys. Thank you. Okay, so that's the main thing with the word mandated. Such such advice might appear redundant. Okay, redundant is a word that we have here. Such advice might appear redundant, coming as it does after a long unlock phase that permitted the relaxation of restriction on almost all public activities, barring regular flights and trains, and owners have shifted to the citizens to avoid getting infected. Okay, so basically the onus is on the citizens here. Several states with a perceived decline in new infections have opened up even more in Tamil Nadu, for instance. Exams are going on. You have some data here with regards to the active cases and other things. Let's look at the next line here. Whenever you have data, guys, if you can quickly do any analysis of the data, you could do it. But don't worry, you don't need to memorize the data. The passage is not going to run away anywhere. You can always look at it. But one more thing, when you have numbers could be in words, numbers could be in numerals also, numericals also. So whichever it is, be careful and read it carefully. Okay, let's move on to the next line here. Encouraging results from vaccine trials and likelihood of early use of authorization have weakened voluntary caution, and citizens are yielding to pandemic fatigue. This kind of gives us opinion about what he feels, right? Author feels like onus is on the people, obviously, with unlock happening. And the other thing is, after being in lockdown for a pretty long time, people and with the vaccine trials going on and success stories coming out, self-protection is what people might ignore, and that is what the author doesn't want. Okay? Health authorities must reinforce the message that low-cost interventions such as mask and ventilation and norms cannot be abandoned. So most importantly, the thing is you have to still stick to the norms. So this is for all of us actually, guys. It's not just for the passage, also for the questions. After getting first vaccine dose, I've seen some students, some people relax with their masks and all. Don't do that. Your immunity is developed after 2 weeks at least after the second dose. So make sure you complete the doses. Okay, so that's for everybody from there. Let's look at here. Evidence from lockdown in India shows the reproductive number for COVID, representing the number of fresh infections caused by an individual, was indeed reduced by the curves, etc. Then you have some data about April and November months, how things are still a little bit challenging. The prime task before health administrators is to convince the average citizen that there is much to be gained through inexpensive lifestyle modification. On one side, we talk about the huge hospital bills. On the other side, there's a simple mask that can help us. So we need to focus on the inexpensive lifestyle things that we could do. From our side is important. And then we have data, the research that is done here from the 131 countries, groups, you cut down the death rate, or you have better results with masks, and how the people who are frontline workers, whether it is health workers and doctors, are protected if less number of cases are there. Even they are the ones whom we need to save, right? So our simple methods can help us there. The central government has rightly prioritized. Now, these are two things that we need to keep in mind here. The central government has rightly prioritized targeted containment, but it should standardize testing protocols across states and not dilute the message of safe behavior by laboring over the point of recoveries and low per million fatalities. Okay? So here the passage is talking about COVID. That's the first thing that we have. The entire passage is written because the unlock is going on, and that government is trying to develop the economy, or the economy should improve. There should be more trade happening, etc. But at the same time, they're worried that containment restrictions or containment areas might kind of dampen the efforts that are going on. On the other side, the author also feels that it is not just from the government side, but we have to have the other norms in place, and we need to look at the inexpensive method. That is a simple part that we have in this passage. Now let's look at the questions here, guys. Which of the following seems to be one of the major concerns of the government in times of the winter period amidst Corona? So one of the major concerns of the government in winter, you have the clear-cut information. Winter is what they're looking at. Government's concern, very clearly whose concern is asked here. So this is a pretty much easy question. There's no reason for anybody to make a mistake here, and majority, I mean, I've seen close to 100% accuracy here with this question with all those students who have attempted here. So obviously it was a concern about economy and market operations which might get affected. So the first one will be your answer for this question. Making citizens understand the role of precaution. That's what the author is trying to say. That is also important, but government focus was more on economy in the initial lines. Okay? Making people adhere to the rule of social distancing. Again, that's on the precaution side. Daily increment in the cases of COVID infection. Their concern was more on the containment areas, and they wanted to be micro targeted, which is basically down to the individual. Micro targeting is marketing or that kind of terminology. Here, they want the data to be used properly, and individual level information should be given to the individuals. That's what the focus is there. So pretty easy question, not at all difficult, and you have the answer in the first few lines. Let's look at the next question. Which of the following ways would help in minimizing the impact of present rise in the infection of corona? The first option that we have here is highlighting the area online and containing it through micro-targeting. So definitely, whichever region is containment area, the government wants those areas, and the information about those areas should be provided online. Because if you provide information online, everybody gets to know it, right? If I have to travel to a particular place and I know that area is in containment zone, I might avoid my travel or find out something. The same thing applies with e-commerce and e-commerce people also, right? They will probably say this is in containment area zone, so we might not be able to deliver. It will help Swiggy, it will help e-commerce, it will help everybody. So that is what the thing that we have. So this can be my answer. Then the other one, putting out information of containment zones on the internet. Yes, that is, I would say, a partial one. I would say it's not a full one. The target is more in terms of why we are looking at that, right? Why is the government asking it, and which is in the first option that we have. Newly developed vaccines, giving vaccines to the containment areas clearly or directly mentioned here. And none of the above is an answer that we have here. Remember, some of you, if any, is confused here. One important thing I want you to focus on the word none of the above. Whenever you have options which are either none of the above or all the above, even in the last sample papers or last papers, we have seen some questions where we had this none of the above and all the above. The moment we see this, there's like, okay, what is it? Should I go for none of the above or should I go for the particular answer? Right? One suggestion I have for you when it comes to this, read the question carefully. Obviously, that is one thing, because if the question is giving you a particular keyword like most important, most significant, that kind of keyword is there in the question, then you might have to look at the keyword carefully and look at the questions carefully. But here, if you see none of the above, whenever you're doing this question type, always see that there is no answer in the question. It's not that I thought about some answer and that answer is not there. That is not what none of the above. I give you a simple analogous example here. Whenever you go for nota, whenever you go for the nota in voting and all that, of course, not many of you might have crossed 18, and probably it's next election that you need to think of. Nota is more like you didn't, none of the above is suitable according to you. You have 3 or 4 people there and you think the above is suitable. It's not that I am not the candidate and my name is not there. I don't think anybody is suitable other than me, so I'll choose none of the above. No, that's not what is nota, guys. Nota is about none of the 3 people or 4 people or whatever 10 people you have in the list. You don't think anybody is suitable, only then you'll go for it. Okay? So whenever you have none of the above, be cautious. The answer choice is more to do with you don't think any answer is clear. Question, the answer choices. Next question. Which of the following gives an impression that the government is looking forward to bringing back the pre-COVID level of economic activity? Obviously, you're working on reopening and there's some kind of guidelines that the government is issuing and what kind of things that they're trying to do. This question probably you'll have to go through all the options and choose your decision carefully. The new guidelines explicitly mentions the same. The government is adamant upon relaxation to the citizens. Adamant is pretty strong word here. No rules on the importance of social distancing. The emphasis of the government on the need of prior consultation with the center before implementing the lockdown on entire state or a particular city level. Now, if you look at all the options here, new guidelines is there, but new guidelines is intended to give for the economic activity there. Right? Government is adamant is a pretty strong word here. No rules on distancing. That's something the author is trying to say. The focus is on economic activity and all. But if you look at the option D is pretty much clear that whenever the government is saying that if there's a containment area that might have an effect on the economic activity, that is what you had in the first line of the passage. And then later the government kind of said, you consult us, let us know. So that is what is putting up a rule or a procedure or something like that, right? So that kind of gives and what do you say, control is going to the central part of it, and then that kind of emphasizes also that we can infer that we don't want to get locked down suddenly, or we don't want lockdown scenario where any state does as per its wish. Let's assume there is a cargo to be traveled from one state to another state, and then suddenly one state puts a lockdown and everything is like standstill, right? I might need raw material from one place while the industry is in some other place. That affects, right? That affects the entire trade. So government needs the economy to be supported. So definitely D seems to be a pretty much a decent option in this case, right? The ninth question, a little bit inferred, but still not very difficult. And a good percentage of students have done this also, right? Next one, what is the meaning of the word redundant in the given context in the passage in the first paragraph? Pretty easy question. I'm sure each one of you knows this word. Motivating, relaxing, something which is no longer useful, repetitive in nature. The answer here is clear. Redundant is something which is no longer useful here. Next one, which of the following resonates with the author's viewpoint? What does the author think? Now you have two viewpoints here. The opening is more in terms of what's the government trying to say, towards then the author is trying to put up his point of view in terms of mass and other things. So let's see what the author thinks. The version, perspective of the question is what we need to look at in this question. The government is worried about citizens. That is kind of interpretation that you can, if anybody wants to comment, criticize, or make a hype about something, they can look at this perspective, but that's not the version that I want my CLAT students to look at. Let's look at the other one. The onus of taking precaution and safeguarding oneself has fallen upon citizens. That looks like an answer here because people need to take the simple methods, low-cost methods. That's what the author was repeatedly saying. Looks like that. The citizens are acting with prudence. Prudence is like wisdom, guys. Well, the author kind of said there's some kind of fatigue of lockdown. So definitely they're acting with prudence, does not agree with that point. So we cannot go with this. The new guidelines will make sure that the vaccine reaches to the majority of the citizens. Vaccine distribution, how many people will get vaccinated by July, August, September, or 2022. That kind of information is not discussed here. So pretty clearly the onus of the precaution lies in the hands of the common man becomes our answer. So that's option B. Okay, pretty much inferred question again, but not difficult, and a good number of 70 to 80% of students have done this also, right, which is good. Which of the following things could benefit economy directly or indirectly? So you have two words here, directly or indirectly. Social distancing, strict adherence to wearing masks, partial restrictions on gatherings. So you have the data about the reduction, cutting down the population. There's like restricting the group gatherings to 10 people. They had an improvement of 38%. And social distancing norms, less expensive measures like wearing masks. All these things are pretty much, you can scan from the passage. So obviously, even though it's an all the above, this is not at all difficult for us. A doable question. D is the answer here. Okay. So any questions on this passage, guys? Any question that you would like to debate or discuss, please chat in the box. Vatika's answer. All correct, Vatika. That's very nice. Vatika is response 12th, D obviously 11th, B 10, C, that's good. 90, yes, good Vatika, good. That's a good one. Any questions on that, Naina, Vartika and others? Any question type that you had a difficulty in terms of addressing or any question types you want to look at with a little strategy there? If it's a no, then we can move on to the third one. Okay, then let's move on to the next question, the third passage. Please take a quick read at that. Okay, the Poland's High Court, and this is related to some new laws. Take a quick read at it. Okay. So the only reason I'm asking you to do a quick read, guys, I'm sure each one of you solved the passage, but the content will be fresh in your mind. That's one thing. And what happens is in exam, when the time is running, you might overlook certain keywords, and maybe in a rush you might mark some other answers. But when you look at it post the exam, I need each one of you to do this actually, whoever is taking our mock exams. Always, guys, exam is for 2 hours, right? In those 2 hours, you might not be able to solve all the 150 questions. But after the exam is over, once the results are published, please take a look at all those questions that you were not able to attempt. And I want you to do them as seriously as if it was an exam. The reason I want you guys to do that is it will tell you whether it was a time constraint or it was a knowledge issue. The moment it is not a knowledge issue, because knowledge part by now, I'm sure you're confident. And if there's a knowledge issue, you had some doubt, you can always reach out to us. But 99% of the times at this point of time, I'm pretty confident it will be a time thing. So time is all about practice. So this 1 month that we have in hand, if you're able to understand that, okay, this is just a time issue and it is in my hands, if you're able to realize that, it's going to benefit you a lot. So I want you to realize that, because otherwise what you'll think is, okay, I'm working, I'm doing this, my marks are just this. No, let's look at the action points. That's the ultimate goal that we have to have. The action point will be the time management. And time management will happen only when you believe that time is a constraint. Okay, if you feel like, because most students come to me like reading is the difficulty, or I'm from a different vernacular language, or I'm not from the metros, this kind of set of statements come to me, I would say, no, if you know your weakness, just work on it, right? I always say that if the doctor knows what the illness is, then you should be leaving it to the doctor, right? He'll take care of it. You just focus on what you need to do. So what is the weakness? If time is the weakness, let's work on it as seriously as we can. So any passage that you do, the skill pack, the knowledge pack, whatever material that you have, and the online test, rank pack that you're having, sectional tests that you're doing, always go with time. Now it's always about time, guys. Whatever you read it, whatever, even if you're reading a newspaper article for GK, 450 words, how much time will you give it? 2 minutes? 3 minutes? That's it. Everything has to be time bound. Just what do you say, get the time into your into your system. Okay, get the time into the system, and automatically you'll do wonders in the final exam. Okay, so that's what I want to say about time management. Let's move on to this Poland based question. Poland's High Court in favor of a near total ban on abortion last Thursday. 4 years ago, the government was forced to back down after it proposed legislation to achieve the same goal. Hundreds of thousands of women took to streets to protest. Parliamentarians were rattled and the bill was dropped. So this is about some latest news about a ban, and it was announced. The same thing was actually announced many years ago, but at that point of time, there was some kind of agitation, and so they had to take it back. A rollback took place, but now again they released it. So that's what the summary of the first paragraph that we have. Poland already has the toughest abortion restrictions of any country in Europe. So the word toughest kind of suggests that the author also thinks this country is having tough rules, tough restrictions. Adjectives play a role, guys. But With enthusiastic blessing of most influential Catholic Church in Europe, the government decided to persevere by resorting to judicial chicanery. So government tried to get the influence of court of the church and try to do that. How did they do that? They had some judges in the tribunal, and then they requested a review of laws, and it was presided by Kazisdisky Crony. One thing I want to say, we are not doing a spell check in CLAT. Okay, whenever I come across passages which have very complicated names or difficult to pronounce, don't worry about it. Mr. K is Crony. That's it. Simple word. Don't worry about pronunciation, because it is a trap. When you're reading, what happens is we try to correct ourselves with pronunciation psychologically. Don't do that. Move on. Mr. K is Crony. The court ruled that the abortion of fetuses with serious abnormalities amounted to an unconstitutional form of eugenics. I hope you know the word eugenics. Well, I'm sure you're familiar with euphemism, right? EU is good. So eugenics is some kind of selective picking up of kids or selective breeding kind of process. Of the 1100 terminations, 98% of this came into a category. You have some factual data given here. The ruling places Poland far outside the settled European consensus agreement on the right of women. So here you're talking about Poland. The author is trying to say what Poland did. Poland did something with the support of the church. And the author is also trying to say that this is not in line with the EU's policies or EU's terms. So he's also saying that this is too strict and not close to the EU, right? Publication of the ruling in its current form may not be a foregone conclusion. For 6 years, PIS has successfully manipulated the courts and media, relentlessly targeted minorities, and ignored the obligations of EU membership. Its bullying behavior, pretty domineering, bossy behavior, has been justified in name of protecting Polish values. So they are calling it protecting our system or protecting our values. And Mr. K puts it, they have their repository in the church. So basically repository is the storage of something. So all their Polish values are protected or stored in the form of the church or in the church. But the shock and cruelty of the abortion ban decreed without discussion, the order which came out without discussion, has generated a backlash well beyond the usual suspects in Poland's liberal cities. One worried PS parliamentarian reportedly told the newspaper that the court's decision will backfire and damage the standing of Catholic Poland. So someone is very much unhappy with the way the decision has come out because there was not deliberate discussion. The evidence so far bears that out, defying COVID restrictions. So people are not following the COVID rules and they're coming out and showing their agitation. We in India also had for quite some time some agitations at the borders near Delhi. So there's something going on, but still people came out and fought for it. Churches have been daubed with graffiti and masses disrupted. So you should probably understand graffiti is an art form. So daubed with is basically, contextually you can infer the meaning of the word even if you're not familiar with the word. Graffiti is probably known to all of you. It's basically smearing or a painting. So churches, they painted all the stuff. Masses disrupted. So prayer halls and prayer sessions were kind of disrupted. And women were portraying some characters. Priests in small towns and villages have been challenged. Tens of thousands of women went on strike. On Tuesday, characteristically hyperbolic, somebody who's talkative or speaks a lot, exaggerates. That's a better word that we can say with hyperbolic, exaggerates. Should be protected at any cost and claim the protests were an attempt to destroy the Poland and its history. Okay. Given the government's innate authoritarianism, so we are saying the government is some kind of domineering, bossy, kind of autocratic, it's close to that. Some form of constitutional tribunal's ruling seems certain to be signed into law. Something or the other will come up. Nevertheless, the scale of pro-choice protests could prove a tipping point. Brand of Catholic nationalism treats opponents as traitors, but as EU member state, Poland's values should be debated and negotiated fairly in public square, not handed down by priests and through rubber stamp of a puppet court. Happily, the signs are that more and more Poles are prepared to fight for that right. There's one thing that I want you to suggest in this passage, guys. This is a passage where you might have seen a good number of unfamiliar words. Somebody who's not good with vocabulary or someone who might find vocabulary to be a what do you say, a weak area, you might be taken aback by this passage. But I think with a little patience, you could move on, because this passage is not pushing you towards regression. Every line, even if you ignore the word that you don't know, you can still summarize or take some essence, right? The only reason that something should stop us from doing a passage or from moving on from a passage is what we call regression. And regression is basically where every bit and every point you have to recap and summarize your content or information, and you're probably missing the flow of the content. You're not able to understand the flow properly, and it's taking a lot of time. That's when we'll push off to the end. But in this, whether the word is what do you say, rattled or persevere or crony or eugenics or consensus, not everything is actually difficult. But bullying, decreed or defied, dogged, or hyperbolic, all these words, they're not difficult. They're pretty much commonly used if you were focusing on your vocab-based worksheets or vocab-based material or other material. But you can still do this passage with the knowledge of your contextual vocabulary techniques. Okay? So nothing should stop you there. Let's look at the questions. The 31. Who among the following was against the ban when it was proposed for the first time? Now here this word first time is a keyword for you, right? Because later there were many people, but the first time it was woman who came out. That was very evidently given. So the answer here is A. Okay, answer here is pretty much a clear one. First time it was woman, so answer here is A. Had the option been somewhere around, maybe farmers wouldn't cause you fall for the trap, guys. If the option was something like people, common people, and if you missed first time, you would have probably made this question a mistake here. But since the option is farmers and it is a woman related issue, you might have corrected yourself even if you haven't seen the word first. But that is a keyword in this part. Thank you. You miss that word, there's a possibility of making a mistake. Or even if the statement was one of the option was B and A and B, you might fall for it again if you miss the word first. So be cautious, read your questions carefully, look at the clear terminology that determines or freezes your options. Okay. Next one. Which of the following option has similar meanings to the words chicanery, crony, and eugenics? Now this word, 3 words are there, and 3 options you need to solve. Definitely, when we come across vocabulary, the psychological feeling is, I don't know this word, I might not be able to do it. Overcome that, guys. You can freeze those options which you are familiar with and then move on with the others, right? So we had Mr. Case crony, that is one thing, and judicial chicanery, that's another word. Eugenics is the 3rd word. So selective breeding comes out to be the eugenics part of it. Companion or deception, that's a word. Partner in crime or companion, crony is a word that I can go with, but deception is much better word. All 3 options have to be right. Don't fall for one particular answer. Okay, whenever you have such multiple words, the mistake that we usually do is we are in a rush, we pick one and we move on. No, have patience to look at everything, and that becomes your answer here for the 14th question. Next one. Which of the following is not correct according to the passage? Not correct according to the passage. Such questions, when they come, read all options. Make sure that you connect each and every line with the passage and you'll find your answer. When the abortion was announced initially, when the abortion ban was announced initially for the first time, it's so widespread. First thing is not correct, and here I have the word widespread. In order to ratify my answer, I have the keyword there is hundreds and thousands of women have come out. So that word I have it, so I'll pass this option there. The ban was passed by the judiciary of the country. Obviously, they intervened and they tried to do it. After the judiciary banned abortion in the country, the citizens accepted the law. Now, not correct, pretty clearly sees the answer for us, because citizens did not accept it. Right, guys? Citizens did not accept it. So hence this becomes an answer for us. Okay. It's an easy scan question. The only reason you might make a mistake in this question is if you ignore the word not. The word first in the first question, the word not in the 3rd question of this passage, guys. The trap words, the words that we miss in a rush. Make sure that you keep in mind whenever you have such words. I always say that whenever such words come across, the words that you see a lot in your mocks, you have to have your alert button on in your mind. You have to be more cautious. That's it. Okay, prepare your system for that. Next one. What is the most suitable explanation to destroy the Poland and the end history of Polish nation? That was more a version of Mr. K, and Mr. K's perspective is more that judiciary and the Polish values are all in the church, so churches should not be, what do you say, graffiti shouldn't be done, churches should be protected, etc. So his version and his answer is more close to option A here. According to K, the law should be agreed upon the basis of what church suggests. If not followed, then the history of the country is destroyed. So this is what is an answer. You might fall for the none of the above or get confused again whenever you see that, but please follow the earlier rule that we said. Whenever you have none of the above, please look at the options that you have and then decide whether you should go for a none of the above or this particular option. Okay? And you have it pretty clearly in the passage also, where you have the 1, 2, 3, third paragraph, last few lines connected with Mr. K's point of view, and you can happily choose your answer there. Okay. According to the author, what is the way ahead? Now, what is the way ahead is more towards the summary part of it, towards the end lines of the passage. So the author kind of says that the court shouldn't be biased and the issue should be debated in a fair manner. You have the lines that it shouldn't be rubber stamped by a puppet court, and it should be debated fairly, negotiated fairly. So somebody might fall for the word fairly and just pick B, but you have A and B, their options. Whenever you have multiple options, have patience to eliminate the other one carefully. Otherwise, you'll come out and say, ma'am, I picked one, but the other one turned out to be an answer. I don't want you to do them. Whenever you think there is something two you have a confident and correct line that you could connect with to eliminate it. Okay, it is in your hands. It's just one extra 5 seconds of effort, you will get it done. So just think of it. 1 mark of accuracy versus a negative mark of 0.25. An extra 5-second effort. When you know that it is between these two that you have to choose. So you have your answer pretty clear that both A and B are the answers. Okay, debated fairly, and the court shouldn't be biased or court shouldn't be influenced with what the government wants to do or the authoritarian government's activities. Clear, guys? So in this passage, pretty much you have a mix of easy to medium, but the accuracy percentage is decent, and surprisingly, I think the number of people who did this right is better than the earlier two passages. So I think always if you have a question about should we have a difficult paper or an easy paper, I think you guys should get a difficult paper because your accuracy seems to be good in that. Okay, because you're more cautious and you don't make mistakes when the paper is tough. Okay, irrespective of how the paper comes. Irrespective of how the paper comes, don't worry. That's my simple point here. Any questions with this passage, or can I move on? It's clear, Naina. Okay, Vatika. I see only Vatika and Naina responding. Thank you so much, because that makes it clear to me whether how you're following the topic. Okay. Anything on the question types? Okay. Move on to the next one then. Okay. The notification. Okay, this is a question. The notification this week bringing all online content, news and current affairs, films and OTT platforms under the ambit of Union Information and Broadcasting has raised concerns that it could be a prelude to more legislation and government control of dynamic media sectors. Registration of digital businesses and control over online content and free speech are both problematic. So two things are a problem. One is registration of digital businesses and control over online content and free speech. Okay, well, the first is nearly impossible to implement. Okay, first one is a lot more difficult. It also puts Indian firms at a disadvantage to foreign entities. The second would be tantamount to censorship. So basically, there's a lot of regulation in terms of the control that they are trying to get on free speech, and the author is some kind of unhappy about it. If that happens, it would be a backward step in a democracy already slipping on media freedoms, with journalists being arrested for alleged sedition, while large number of websites are blocked and internet shutdowns imposed year after year. Now, this seems to be a long line here, but whenever you have certain words that you are not familiar with, look for the details around it. If you didn't understand what you mean by backward step in democracy, or if you did not understand what the word sedition is, which probably you should be familiar because you're doing legal and other sections, but the data there will give you some inferred idea. Blocking, arresting, and not allowing the information to pass, that is all an activity that you can summarize into what this entire thing is all about. Okay, this is especially because online sectors covered in notification are already regulated by laws. You have lots of laws that we're discussing here. OTT platforms have also put self-regulation into place. There's self-regulation also going on there. That is why the ministry's April circular on a committee frame rules to regulate website content had to be withdrawn because of an outcry. Already there is a self-regulation going on, so another kind of rule is probably not needed. The IND minister had in fact pointed out then that the PM saw media in India as one of the very important pillars, rightly adding that in Indian media, regulation is done in various layers, first by journalists, then by editors, and government believes self-regulation by media. So denied that in the parliament any government effort to control websites, etc., etc. That is in fact the nub of the issue. Okay, many laws already applied to all content are being implemented forcefully. That said, we must respect different opinions. Crackdowns on free speech will only impair this country's efforts towards digital revolution as well as erode its power. Digital India still has a window to compete with others. Government control and censorship of online content could stifle this particular Make in India dream. So you're trying to talk, the author is trying to talk here about the entire passage is more about the kind of regulations the union ministry is trying to put up and what kind of impact that could have on the digital aspects, what kind of impact it could have on freedom of speech or censorship, how it will affect. And by the way, the media themselves are also doing some kind of self-regulation. So these are the main points that we have from this passage. So let's look at the options. Which of the following is untrue according to the passage? Whenever you have any information-based question, this is predominantly an information-based question where you have to match the content in the options with the passage. Obviously, you'll have to look at all options, okay? And you need to ratify that this is right or wrong. Registration and digital businesses and control over online content and free speech are both problematic. Yes, that's a point that we have somewhere. Digital India actually has a window to effectively rival the best in the world. Obviously, we have a chance there. OTT platforms have also put non-self-regulation into place. Now, this is where it is negative words. This at least 3 or 4 passages right now we got these words like non, not, etc. The line we earlier said, I think it's in second passage. OTT platforms have also put self-regulation into place. So not is a word and definitely untrue is the keyword here. So your answer choice here is C. Let's look at the other one. Government control and restriction of contents could smother Make in India dream. Yes, that's again available in the last line. Pretty easy question, not at all difficult. Okay, looks like an inferred and a difficult one, but it's not at all difficult one at all. Everything happily skim scan. No difficult word. All options are pretty close. An easy question. You should be definitely doing it right. Why is control over online content and free speech problematic? Why is it problematic, guys? So you have, it would be a backward step in democracy already sleeping on media freedoms. You have that line in the passage in the first and second paragraphs. You have second paragraph, first line. You have that thing. It would help in regulating content in online media. It would help towards digital revolution. It would help towards law enforcement already taking action on all. If you look at it, why is it problematic is the question there, and you're having 3 options there which are talking about helping or something like that, and you don't need to debate further on the options. It's pretty much clear. The answer choice is A. Answer choice is A. Okay, very good. Next one, which of the following seems to be the appropriate title to the passage? Now this comes in Appropriate title the passage. What do you keep in mind whenever we have title of the passage? The entire passage idea should be in your mind so that your title fits to the scope of the passage. Something which cannot be outside the scope or something which cannot be too narrow. Okay, elimination technique is what you need to master in order to do this question, and compare the options carefully. This is a little time consuming question type as against anything like the direct ones that we did in the previous one. So I would probably call this a medium type of question unless the options are easy to eliminate. Regulation of online content, the need of the hour. Need of the hour, throughout the passage, the author is not happy with the kind of regulation that we are doing, so happily eliminate this option. Media, regulate less, not more. Yes, that is a point that we have actually. We need to have less of regulations than too many, because too many regulation might affect the digital front. So this could be the answer choice for us. India towards digital revolution. Yes, India is towards digital revolution, and we are talking about digital aspect also in the passage. We have it in the last lines also. However, the concern was more on the speech part of it, or freedom, or the regulations part. That is not emphasized here. Okay. The fourth option is crackdown on free speech. This is little broad, guys. Crackdown of free speech. Is it individuals? Is it media? Is it entire country? Is it like an emergency that we have? Well, not that. It's too broad for me to go for that. So hence, I would prefer 20th one B as my best possible answer. As I told earlier, stick to the scope of the passage and eliminate your options. Whenever you're stuck, have strong reasons to ratify your answer, and then your accuracy level will improve you. Okay. Next one. One thing with this kind of passages, articles that I'm trying to say, whenever a passage is picked, it is usually picked from an article, guys. And the article in originality could be huge also. Okay, in huge, I mean like 1,000-word article or 2,000-word article also. So if you feel that you come across some article somewhere and you felt some title, I don't want you to worry a lot about it, because as I told earlier, stick to the content that you have, stick to the information that you have, stick to the scope of the passage that you have. Unless there's a question about what comes next, unless there's a question what could be the continuing passage, I think you can think around within the limits of the content of the passage. Okay, that's an important keyword I want you to keep in mind. Next one, what does the author mean when he uses the phrase nub of the issue, when he tried to say something is important? Answer choice is pretty easy here. Argument is central and most basic part. The other options are pretty much easily irrelevant, and you can eliminate. That's not a point there. Next one, why has the notification of bringing online content, news and current affairs, films and OTT platforms under the ambit of Union Information and Broadcasting raised concerns? So why has this raised concerns? Now, the moment you see this question, you will think of what was the problem and why were people worried, obviously. And you need to find the answers. First one, Digital India still has window to successfully compete with the best in the world. Now that if they have a window, that's a positive thing. So that's happily eliminated option choice. Let me go to option B. Crackdowns on free speech will impair countries' efforts towards a digital revolution. You have that in the last paragraph. So this maybe is my answer. But as I told you, I will not freeze my answer until I go for all options. Next one, if you look at it, it could be a prelude to more legislation and government control of dynamic new media sectors at a time when we need less regulation. So digital is what they're talking, digital intervention, digital revolution. So the new media in terms of digital and all these activities, if there's a regulation, this could be a thing. So C also looks like an answer. Let's look at D. OTT platforms have also put self-regulation into place. So A and D are happily eliminated. Now I need to choose my answer between B versus C. Whenever you such questions, whenever you have two options that you need to identify, always, whenever you have a situation, A versus B or a B versus C, always look at a thinking process which is A minus B. This is my approach. This is Sirisha ma'am's approach for you. Always look at A minus B. Like, let's think a little mathematical way or a scientific way in language aspects. What I mean is observe the difference between the two. right? A minus B is nothing but observations. Or in this particular question, what is a subset? What is a superset? Like for instance, when I said scope of the passage, it is nothing but how broad is the data, how much wide is the information. So if you look at this options, option B turns out to be a little bit too specific. Okay, and option C is in terms of regulation. So basically regulations will come and legislations and regulations will come, and with this there might be multiple activities that might happen, and there might be an effect on the digital thing. So C is a bit relevant in terms of the scope of the passage, or I would probably say C is more a superset to the content that we have in the passage. Hence I would prefer C over B in this particular question. Okay? So you also have a line in the first few paragraphs where you have the answer there. Pretty much it's clearly given about REST regulation. So even that can take you there. But if anybody is confused between B and C, this is my version and explanation for you. Okay? I hope that's clear. Okay, I hope that's a question about mocks from Arya, and that's it. Others, Nayana and Vartika, I hope you are clear with the questions and the passage. Anything that you had in difficulty with the question type or strategies, please put it up. And at least towards the end of the entire discussion also, you can remind me once again if in case I missed your chat conversation, because as part of the scroll, if I overlook something, you can always feel free to ask towards that. Okay, guys, so let me move on to the last, to the next question, question number 23 to 27. We have two more passages to go with. Let's go a little simpler, small in size probably, but let's read the content. As a child, I spent my days drifting in confusion of sets the tone about whom the author is trying to talk. Nothing inspired me, neither my teachers nor studies. And my parents thought something about school. I don't agree to that. They confused religion with spirituality, etc. Most of what transpired in these institutions seems to be a dull black cloud hovering over me. What did move me were the autumn leaves and reds, the winter skies and all, snowfall, the weather, the nature, and all these things. So basically, this is about a child who's pretty much confused, and he did not enjoy much from the school and all, but he enjoyed nature a lot. So that's what we have in terms of description. Beautiful words, beautiful description, but get the essence and move on quickly. Okay, and there are lots. Whenever it is description, you will come across lots of words, guys, and sometimes the words might be unfamiliar for you, or sometimes the word could be idiomatic usages. Get the gist and move on, unless it's needed that you need to pinpoint a particular word and its meaning in the passage. Don't waste too much time there. Okay. The trees gleaming into candles, upside down in the bright sun. So basically describing how beautiful the nature is, amazing beauty, and then etc. There were things that grabbed me and fascinated me. My personal life was composed of all things natural, and my friends were squirrels, etc. All these were portents of an organic truth to be revealed. So something you're expecting to come out, some truth to be revealed. So he's trying to say about plus, minus, good, bad, death, destruction, etc., and all the signs. Let's move on to the next paragraph. Thus, I was composed of two different parts, each amplifying the meaning and meaningless of the other. So he says he has two different parts, and one amplifying the other, one affecting the other, one showing the other a lot more. Like the yin and yang, a white and a black force intertwined within me, chasing each other. The black made the white more pure and beautiful, and the white made black more foreboding and ominous. Even if you're not familiar with the word foreboding and ominous, you should at least understand that it is not pure, or it's not beautiful, or it is not good. Something that you should be able to at least decipher here. One Christmas morning, my eyes were drawn to the one gift I hadn't stumbled upon in my parents' usual hiding places. I knew all of the others from looking under beds, crawling up in the attic, or peering over the high shelf above my father's cupboard. So I reached for this first, as my family members all gasped with hypocritical surprise, opening boxes and small parcels they had secretly discovered only days before. Like Like all children, on that fateful morning, I reached out for the most intriguing gift first, right? Something which looked very fascinating. And for the unknown, basically all he probably might have secretly opened and packed it again. But unlike the others, this gift turned out to be a talisman, a charm of my future. It was a mix from school and others. We talked about nature, beauty, you talked about the white and pure, black and white yin yang, etc. And the white and pure, black and white yin yang, etc. And the gift. That's the basic summary of the passage. Let's look at the question. First one, which set of words given below character all the words in the following list? Order, in the order. Please be careful with the words and order. Sometimes it's the order and you'll make a mistake. Don't do that. Hovering is like hovering helicopter. Potent is something to do with science. Ominous is something bad. Intriguing is something that you like, and something fun or attractive. So, satisfying, fascinating, interesting. So, fascinating looks good. Ominous is loud, menacing, threatening, and heavy. Threatening or menacing looks good. Potents are more to do with science. Hovering is like hovering helicopter, something staying out there. So if you eliminate options one by one, starting with intriguing towards hovering, so the best possible answer for you here will be C. Wavering is like fluctuating thoughts, sliding is like moving. So hovering, a helicopter was hovering over the fields. That kind of lines you might have come across in the newspapers, etc. So, one not at all difficult. Next one, which of the following statement best describes the character of the narrator of this passage? He was a curious kid and loved reading books. Well, he was not very much into school and all the things. So the first option can be eliminated. He believed in black magic and had a talisman for good luck. So he got a book with magic, but it has nothing to do with the author believing in black magic. That is like totally extreme deduction. He was a confused and curious kid. He was mixed. And on one side, he was confused, definitely, but he was too much into nature and other things. So C looks like an answer. He was a mischievous kid and loved bothering his parents. Well, this tries to say that the author is like a menace, always trying to trouble parents. Well, that was not what we had in the passage. Yes, he likes to open like all kids, but I don't think he's menacing or problematic towards his parents or troubling them. So obviously C looks like a better answer because the version of the parents is not too much discussed in the passage also. Why did the narrator consider morning fateful? So you have the last line of the passage. It was a book that would change my life forever. That's the last line that we have. So anybody who connected with the last line or identified with it would have marked your answer pretty much there. On the Christmas day, he found something that has changed his life forever. This looks like an answer for sure. On Christmas Day, he knew, like all children, he would also get gifts. Well, that was not what is intended to be. It's pretty much open. It was the day he found the purpose of his life. Some of you might have confused with option C, guys. Well, he found something and he changed his life forever. That's what we have. But purpose of life is more like a big, what do you say, something which is like a career path. I would become a Mother Teresa or something like that. Why am I alive? That kind of thing. The passage doesn't give any information which where something is like a guide or something which was like a, what do you say, compass to his life or something like that is not mentioned in the passage. Hence, if anybody was confused between A and C, I would go with A for that reason because the lines in the passage doesn't emphasize a lot in that direction. Had there been a few more extra lines, had there been a little more continuation to this passage, giving some extra information about how that book showed some part to him or something that helped them or something that guided him or made him something in life, I might have thought about it. But for now, between A and C, I would go with A as an answer choice. Okay, next one. Which of the following statements summarizes the best in terms of the passage? The life of an adolescent is composed of both positive and negatives. So you have the positive and negative in the second paragraph, but you're talking about an adolescent and you're talking very, what do you say, generic kind of a statement here. The confused kid obtained a gift that changes life completely. Yes, change forever. This can be my answer because the gift changed, then that idea is not reflected in A, okay? And obviously A is only talking about the first few lines of the second paragraph. The gift part is not addressed there. Discusses the challenges faced by the kid. The passage discusses about the kid and how he was different, but not about what kind of difficulties he had in his life. As if like he's a kid who has to take care of himself at an early age of his life or something like that. No, nothing like that is discussed. The passage talks about a turning point of a single father's life, irrelevant, totally irrelevant. So coming to this question, even though it's a summary question, it is pretty much easy to eliminate, and you can freeze our options on 26B. Okay? So B turns out to be the answer for that question. Okay, guys. Let's move on to the next question. In the passage, compare himself to the yin and yang. So this one might be something that is a little tricky. Yeah, it being an inferred question. There is like only a few students. I mean, like the percentage of accuracy for this question has dropped down a lot compared to the previous questions. Earlier were like 90-100% accuracy you guys maintained, but this question the accuracy has dropped a lot. Probably because you might have felt tricky and time consuming, so marked and moved on, or you had that urge to leave. But let's look at the options and then say, why did the narrator in the passage compare himself to yin and yang? So the first thing is the question, why did he do that comparison? What made, why, and what was the purpose of what made him to compare? Why did he compare? Because yin and yang are both like a two types of things, and one helps the other one amplify, right? So let's see. Like yin and yang, there were both divine and evil spirits in him. Like yin and yang, there were positive and negative sides to his actions. Now, whenever you have such questions, where you have options and you have a tough choice in interpreting the options, A minus B approach works out here. So divine and evil are positive and negative. Again, spirits here. If you see, even up to this part, it is about positive and negatives only. Actions. So the passage didn't discuss about anything about what he did. His actions were not discussed. So this helps us to eliminate option B happily. You don't need to worry. You had some keyword. Even if you were not able to decipher the meanings of the positives or negatives, even if you're not able to interpret the white and the black, at least this is helpful for you to eliminate. We always need to look at that piece of data or piece of information which we can use as a strong reason to eliminate some option whenever we are stuck. Okay? Next one. Yin and yang mirrors his psyche. Yes, yin and yang reflects his psyche. This can be, okay. The yin and yang was his inspiration. So D is also gone. It's not about it being his inspiration, definitely. Nothing inspired him. And the passage was more about what he was like. Okay. So C, B and D are happily eliminated. Now coming to A and B. Should I look at this A and B? Am I stuck between A and B? Let me say divine and evil spirits are like good and bad, positive, negatives only, and spirits in him. But the question here is, why did he compare? Okay, the reason for him to compare is he has two sides in him, and yin and yang is also having two sides. So that's the reason he took its example and tried to explain. So the reason for that comparison is that. Hence, just because yin and yang reflects the way he thinks, and just because the yin and yang is analogous to his kind of what comprises in him the meaning and the meaninglessness, my part of this question leads us to the answer C. It is not about what is in him, it is about why he compared it. And why he compared it? Because it looks like him, right? It looks like it. We compare something when you find some similarity, and that's what it is all about. Okay, guys. So a little tricky question, a little difficult question, a little time-consuming one, but with careful thought and with a little bit of effort and elimination technique and careful observation, you can happily conquer that question. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Naina, Vartika, or anybody else? English is pretty doable section, guys. 30 questions you can happily target. If you're targeting an ALSAR or an NLSU, happily aim for 25 plus. You can do it. And of all my years of experience, definitely students have come out and said that English is a pretty doable section. So definitely that seems to be a doable one. Okay, assuming there are no questions, let me move on to the last passage, pretty much on climate thing. Let's quickly read it and solve the questions. India asserted at the virtual Climate Ambition Summit, co-convened by UN to mark 5 years of agreement that is well on its way to not just fulfilling its national pledge on emissions reduction, but exceeding the commitment. The first few lines of any passage, whenever we look at the main idea or anything, the first few lines give us a hint about in which direction we are going. So here you're talking about climate summit and how India is ready, and definitely the author believes that India is ready, okay, to meet its targets. The performance outlined by Prime Minister Modi rests primarily on estimated reduction of emissions intensity by 21% over 2005 levels. Lots of data is here. Let's quickly move on, guys. Let's not bother. And twin pillars of renewable energy and high forest covers. Reduction of emissions, renewable energy, high forest covers. 3 points that we take away here. Indeed, the gap report of UNEP includes India among the G20 members who are on track with the pact, and based on pre-COVID projections, significantly G20 bloc has responsible for 78% of the emissions. The brief reduction in emissions brought by pandemic has given an opportunity to review the data. The unprecedented event has enabled them to deploy an extraordinary fiscal stimulus for rehabilitating economies and green growth a possibility. India faces a particular challenge in moving its pandemic rehabilitation, spreading away from traditional brown sectors towards green territory. So basically, India is close to achieving its targets. Pandemic gave an opportunity for people to review, but the challenge for India is to invest in green territory. These are 3 main points that we can take away. And of course, emissions, forest cover, those are the few points. Let's look at the rest of the paragraph. At recent summit, Mr. Modi took credit for the expansion of forests, which according to National Pledge under Paris Agreement will serve as a carbon sink. So he gave credit to forest cover. That is a key goal, given that it has multiple benefits, okay? But it is fraught with uncertainty. We always said that focus on the transition words and conjunctions. He focused on forest cover and tried to promote it, but what's actually happening? What is the situation? That gives you a new perspective for this forest cover aspect. The center has questioned the veracity, truthfulness of the data that's coming from the states, credibility, what is the data, can we really believe it? Clearly, without a cohesive policy on verifiable afforestation, we need proper data mechanism. You cannot treat it to be a proper carbon sink there. Carbon sink is basically you'll absorb the carbon dioxide kind of thing. Achieving the 100 gigawatt of solar power capacity within the overall renewable goal from 36 GW now needs a steep scale up that must actively promote rooftop installations. There is little evidence, again you have the word little evidence. We learned in English grammar also, little, a little and the little. Few, a few, the few. Whenever you have these words and the adjectives with an article there, little evidence is almost like none. There's not much evidence that it is a high priority for the states. Transport related emissions, which are a major component of whole, has risen sharply in unlock phase of the pandemic as people prefer personal vehicles, but receive little support from states which fail to give support for cycling and pedestrian activities. Obviously, if you have cycling possibility, you can avoid vehicles wherever possible, and that is good for health also. Large-scale agriculture insurance against climate disasters also needs attention. In the year that remains before countries meet at UN Climate Conference in Glasgow, India needs to focus on future emissions and plan green investments that qualify for global climate funding. Always look at the last lines of the passage also. Opening lines and last lines, they always give you some idea about the content of the passage. So the focus is on India, Paris Summit, what are the targets, is it going to reach, and if it has to reach, what kind of things that it is looking at, and what is the situation with other 3 things that we mentioned. Okay, now let's look at the questions. Which of the following could be constituted from the address made by India in accordance to the passage? Basically, India has asserted something, and address is nothing but close to asserted word that we have in the first few lines. India asserted at the Summit. Opening line itself gives you the answer to this question. Pretty much easy. India is on track with respect to its pledge regarding the emission reduction. Its direct answer, everybody should make it right. India has reduced drastically and leaves the least carbon footprint. Least is an extreme word here, as if it's the country with the least in the entire world. Well, nothing like that. That's a trap word for us. India has reduced the emission and hence can flout the rules. Reduce the emission part of it probably is right. Can flout the rule is disregard the rules. Well, that is not correct. This is like a trap again. Half data is correct, half is incorrect. Okay, don't fall for such information. India is no more a part of Paris Agreement since it has adhered to its pledge. So irrelevant again. So clear cut, easy answer, 28th way. And pretty much everybody did it right. Pretty much everybody who attempted it did this question right. Okay, that's a good one, guys. Okay, you can't make mistake with such easy questions. Which of the following are the parts of the Prime Minister's plan for staying on track with the emission standards as per the agreement? We have three things, right? Pretty much clear, scan from the passage. Emissions is one part, forest cover is another part, and renewable, the three things that we had. So definitely a direct answer again from the passage, not at all difficult. D, all the above again. Easy question, each one of you should have done it right too. Next one, which of the following can be inferred from the passage? Which of the following can be inferred from the passage? So inferred question, a little bit of alert is needed. The pandemic has caused a reduction in emission of gases in an unprecedented manner. We had that information because of the pandemic situation was different and they could review the situation again. So that line is there in the passage. So you had it somewhere in the first paragraph. The unprecedented event has enabled them to deploy an extraordinary fiscal stimulus, etc. And the lines above that, which kind of gave them an opportunity to review their trajectories. The brief reduction in emissions because of the pandemic gave them an opportunity to review the data. So that's one thing we can think of. Countries usually review their goals of reduction of the emission. Well, usually review, nothing like that is mentioned in the passage about the periodic intervals when they check. They clearly mentioned that pandemic gave them an opportunity to review, because I hope you came across this news. In India also, I remember somebody, I think it's one of the cricketers also tweeted it, Harbhajan Singh probably. They somewhere from Jalandhar or Punjab, they could see Himalayas from their hometown, which is like much farther away. Because of pollution, they couldn't see it, but because of the lockdown, air was much better and there was pollution free. So definitely we can connect with that line. Emission of greenhouse gas by G20 bloc has come down by below 78%. 78% is a number that you might have seen in the passage. If you are in a rush, you'll make a mistake, guys. When you have a number, please connect the data given with that number. 78% was more in terms of the contribution factor. Okay, this will be a trap if you are in a rush. Don't do that. Okay, G20 bloc as a whole responsible for the 78% of the greenhouse gas emissions. In rush, incomplete reading of the sentence will make you fall for it. Don't do that mistake. 30th is a pretty easy question again. First paragraph has all the data that you need and A is an answer. Next one, which of the following is true regarding the passage? The author does not seem very optimistic about India attaining its goal. So basically this line does not seem very optimistic. He is doubtful part of it. And the next one is about attaining its goal. So he's talking about the goal part of it. Let's look at the next line. The author seems slightly skeptical, doubtful again, not very optimistic, skeptical, close options, regarding India's approach for achieving the goal. So here you have to see A and B, they're a little close. Let's look at the other options and come back to AB. India promotes brown energy over green energy in Paris Summit. Which of the following is true? India is trying to invest in green energy, so obviously that's a challenge they have. Green energy doesn't require any more investment. No, that's not it. C and D are happily eliminated. Our answer choices between A and B. And between A and B, the doubtful part of it is clear. But what is it he is doubtful about? Is he doubtful about the goal part of it, or is he doubtful about the approach that is being followed? If you look at the last lines of the paragraph, it is clearly mentioned that the author is trying to look at some other activities also. Is solar light approach, a solar energy kind of installation approach which needs a steep thing to develop. Is that a right approach, or should they look at future emissions that they need to work around? How do they get the greenhouse emission related funding? Those pointers were given. So here the doubt is not about the goal or reaching the goal. Here the doubt about approach part of it. So definitely B is a better answer choice here. Okay, 31st question, B is a better choice. So a very few students, the number of attempts are actually coming down by the time you come to the last question, especially if it seems to be difficult. This looks like a difficult question, but around 60 to 70% of the students have made this also right, guys, among those who took it. But whenever you have it to be difficult, be careful. And also have patience, guys. The last question might be easy also. Don't reduce your attempts by the time you come to the last question. Okay. So with this, we completed the passage. If you have any questions, you could always shoot it here. Okay. Any other further questions about the question types and all? So in summary, we have discussed multiple question types here. We did main idea questions. We discussed about some eye traps. We discussed about how to focus on contextual vocabulary. And if you guys have any question types that you have a particular area to focus on, please type it here so that we can focus our next address in those lines. Okay. Focus on any question types that you want a specific things to be looked at. Type it in here. We can address those more in details in the upcoming sessions. Okay, any questions? Assuming there are none. If there are any questions, shoot your questions on discussion board also, guys. We are looking at that too regularly. And take your mocks properly in the given time limit. The more practice you do, the better it is. And we also did a session last Saturday about CLAT being offline. Many were interactive in that session. If any one of you missed that session, please listen to that. There are a lot of key takeaways that you have about OMR and other things. Okay, so I hope that's it then. Have a good day, guys.